What if the way you shut down in conflict, or the people pleasing you can't stop doing, or that critical voice in your head that won't quit? What if none of it is your personality? What if it's not a character flaw at all? I'm Brooke Shoup, and I'm a life coach specializing in trauma recovery and nervous system regulation. And today I want to share something that completely changed how I understood myself. And I think it could change things for you too. Maybe you're here because you think you're overly emotional or too withdrawn, or your relationships don't seem to work. Like, if they got too close, they'd see who you really are. So you put on a mask and you hide how you really feel because it's really terrifying to show the real feelings. But underneath all of that, there's this desperate longing to be seen, to be received, and to have people who actually want to be with you, the real you. And the worst part is you believe this is just how it is, that you're never going to feel okay, that you're stuck in this life forever. And maybe you've tried therapy, you've read all the books, you've prayed, you've joined support groups, and still nothing seems to actually change. So you start to believe that your diagnosis is a life sentence, or that the highest hope is to just cope, or to just manage, or maybe one day I could feel okay. But just okay, not good or purposeful or thriving. If that's where you are right now, I want you to know that I've been there too, and I'm really sorry. It's a painful place to be, especially when the people in your life are telling you that's the truth. Years ago, I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, and while it was validating to finally have a diagnosis, I was deeply discouraged by the help available to me. All the messaging around my recovery was cope with your trauma, manage your symptoms, deal with your issues, and I was hoping for a real solution. I didn't want to be on medication for the rest of my life, and I also didn't want to wear a trauma stamp over my head either. I wanted real solutions, and I wanted to stop living in the past and just move on with my life. Then I read something that changed my whole life. I picked up this book called Complex PTSD by Pete Walker, and I learned something that brought me real hope about my situation. Here's what I learned. Fight or flight, it's not just something we say when we're stressed. These are actual neurological states. And when we're in a stress response for a prolonged period of time, especially in childhood, those stress responses become a part of us. They become like a home state for the nervous system. But here's what gave me hope. If a stressed nervous system created these behaviors and habits, then all I needed to do was learn how to reverse the stress response and I could be free. It became a light in a very dark hallway for me because it meant that my symptoms and my problems were not my identity. It meant that I could change and grow, and I wasn't fundamentally broken. I was just stuck in a pattern. And patterns can be rewritten. So I'd like to teach you what I learned. So often we're told the behaviors we do, the emotions we feel, are the same thing as who we are. Think about it. I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm angry, I'm an alcoholic, or even our careers. I'm a mother, I'm a teacher, I'm a doctor. We're given messaging that what you do is your identity. And that's not such a bad thing when what we do is socially approved of. But when the behaviors or emotions that come out of you are not approved of by your family, your friend group, your community, it becomes what is wrong with you instead of what caused this to come out of you. I believe this for a long time too, because I grew up with the same messaging. But what if that's not true? What if the behaviors you hate, the patterns you can't seem to break, what if they're not character flaws, but they're a product of the stress response? Let me explain what I mean. Your nervous system has different states. Think of them like gears in a car. You're safe, you're regulated, you're in one gear. But when your nervous system perceives threat, even a threat that's not actually dangerous, it's going to shift into a different gear, a stress state. And in that stress state, your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviors, they all kind of change together. They hang out in groups. Now, here's the really important part. When we experience chronic stress, these states can become our default setting. This is especially true when our nervous systems are still developing. They become the lens through which we see the world. So that critical voice, it's not who you are. It might just be a stress response that got wired in early. That urge to flee or shut down, not a character flaw, a survival pattern that your nervous system learned. And here's the thing people often don't realize. We don't just have fight or flight. We actually have 4 main stress responses, and understanding which ones you default to can help you finally make sense of the behaviors that have caused you pain for years. Let's start with fight. This is an activated stress response, which means your body handles the threat by getting in motion and challenging the threat. Now, when we think of fight, we often think of physical aggression, but fight responses show up in a lot of other ways too. It can show up as being overly critical to yourself or to others. It can show up as being defensive when someone gives you feedback. It could be showing up as judgmental or having the feeling that you always need to be right. It can be comparing yourself to others or putting other people down, controlling behaviors, or rage that just seems to kind of come out of nowhere. People with a prolonged fight response tend to use control in order to secure connection, and then they go into rage when they're trying to make themselves feel safe. If this is resonating, you might notice that when you feel threatened in a relationship, you come out swinging, and maybe not with your hands, but with criticism, with blame, or with the need to win the argument. Now, if fight doesn't resonate with you, maybe this one will: the flight response. Flight is also an activated stress response, but instead of challenging the threat, your body tries to escape the threat. And this doesn't mean literally running away. Flight responses can look like perfectionism, trying to be flawless so you can escape criticism or blame. Overworking and staying constantly busy, over exercising, ADHD type behaviors like always moving, always distracted. People with prolonged flight responses try to strive for perfection in order to earn connection, and that helps them secure a sense of safety. If this is you, you might notice that when stress hits, you go into overdrive. You stay busy, you get productive, because stopping feels really dangerous. Rest feels like vulnerability. Okay, so fight and flight are both activated responses, meaning you get moving to get safe. Now we're going to talk about the freeze response, which behaves very different in the body. It's an immobilized stress response, meaning that energy plummets. Think about an animal that plays dead or faints when they're threatened. That's freeze. In humans, freeze can look like fainting, but it can also look like depression. It can look like isolation, being a homebody, avoiding social situations, watching way too much Netflix, playing video games, or screen time in general, needing to be alone to an extreme degree, struggling to engage in relationships at all. It can be oversleeping. It could be daydreaming or dissociating. This means feeling like you're underwater or like someone's talking to you and you see their lips are moving, but none of the words are registering. They're not making sense. That's what dissociation has felt like for me, at least. People with prolonged freeze responses avoid connection and they hide in order to feel safe. If this resonates, you might notice that when you feel stressed, you shut down. You can't move, you can't think, you just kind of disappear, and even if you're physically present. Then there's the fourth one, and this one might be the hardest to recognize because it's the one that gets socially rewarded a lot, and that's the fawn response. Fawn is a stress response that is only found in mammals with attachment centers, meaning they are relationally dependent for survival. It's a response that abandons the needs of the self in order to find safety in the group or in a relationship. Fawning looks like codependency, struggling with identity, not being able to make decisions without approval, doing things you don't want to do or like to do just to make someone happy, the need to make other people feel better so that you can feel better. People with prolonged fawn responses lose themselves in relationships and they self-abandon to make safety. If this is you, you might notice that when conflict arises, you immediately abandon your own feelings and your own needs. You're always the first person to apologize, and you do whatever you need to do so that you can just feel connected again. You become whatever the other person needs, and it's all because your sense of safety feels dependent on keeping the other person happy. Now, here's what I want you to understand about this. It's only an overview. There's so much more to learn about this topic. If you want to go deeper, I have a mini course called Purpose Without Burnout, where I offer all of the introductory nervous system education. The link is below. I also have a free Skills for Resilience assessment that can help you identify some of the developmental skills that might be keeping you stuck in one of these patterns. Before we move on, I need to tell you a few really important things. First, you don't just have one stress type. We all have all of them. You might have a dominant one that shows up most often, but it's actually healthy to have access to all four because they all serve different purposes. Second, everyone likes to judge at least one of these stress types. I'm sure as I was going through these that you had someone in mind that matched fight and you were thinking, yeah, they're judgmental or they're critical. But the reality is all of these exist for a reason. They all kept us safe at some point. Third, the problem isn't having these responses. The problem is being stuck in a pattern of a stress response. When your nervous system can't shift out of fight or can't access anything but freeze, that's when we suffer, and so do our relationships. And that leads me to the fifth F that almost no one talks about: flow. This is a regulated state of mind, the state where we are designed to be when our needs are met and we feel safe. In flow, you have access to what some call the C's of self. You're curious instead of judgmental. You're compassionate instead of critical. You're connected instead of isolated. You're calm instead of anxious or activated. This is the state where you can be present. You can think clearly. Your relationships feel natural and reciprocal instead of threatening. Here's what's so important. Flow is not about being perfect or never feeling stressed. It's about having a nervous system that's flexible enough to move in and out of stress responses as needed and then return to regulation. It's not about getting stuck. How do we move from being stuck in one of the 4F responses to flow? There's so much I could teach about nervous system regulation, and please put your questions in the comments below and I'll make future videos about them. But today, I want to give you one simple practice that you can start right now. I want you to start noticing and naming your F responses. That's it. Just notice when you're in a stress response: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. You feel that critical voice getting loud? I want you to pause and say, oh, that's my fight response. When you notice yourself overworking, getting obsessive, pause and say, that's the flight response. When you can't get off the couch, you're stuck scrolling on your phone, you're struggling to engage with people, I want you to recognize, oh, I'm in freeze right now. You've already had enough judgment in your life. This is about curiosity. The simple act of naming creates space. It helps you disidentify from the emotion. And instead of saying, I'm anxious, I'm broken, you get to say, oh, my nervous system is in a stress response right now. This isn't who I am. It's a state that I'm in, and the state can change. The awareness itself begins to create a flexibility in the nervous system, and it's the first step towards regulation. I know how it feels to believe that you're stuck like this forever, to think your diagnosis is a life sentence, to look at your behaviors and believe it's just who I am. But what if it's not? What if the thing you hate most about yourself is actually your nervous system just trying to keep you safe? You're not broken, you're not too much, you're not poison. You're someone whose nervous system learned how to survive. And that's a beautiful thing because you're here. If you want to go deeper with this work, check out my mini course, Purpose Without Burnout, and get my free Skills for Resilience assessment. Both links are in the description below. This video is the perfect prep to help you get the most out of that mini course. Start practicing today. Just notice and name, and that's where healing begins. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one.